Hi gang, Jeff McAleer here, and no, I'm not shooting the remake to the Blair Witch Project. I am in Presque Isle, Maine, which is probably as far north and east as you could possibly go and still remain in the United States. Presque Isle and Maine itself have a long history, and as poor as that segue may be, so does the item we're taking a look at in this review. I'm going to look at the 30th anniversary hardcover editions available from Wizards of the Coast of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. Oh, and by the way, I just thought it would be fun to shoot the intros in locations that I find myself around the United States, as opposed to just always being in the same place. But anyway, let's take a look at Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 30th edition hardcovers from Wizards of the Coast. Dungeons & Dragons certainly requires no introduction whatsoever, as the game has been around since 1974, and at last count, somewhere in the vicinity of about 22 million people have at some time played Dungeons & Dragons. The game has a long history, and no doubt millions of books have been sold regarding Dungeons & Dragons, be it the actual rule books, adventure modules, or supplements, as well as best-selling novels. Wizards of the Coast has decided to reprint the first edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons rules, and we're going to take a look. Here we have the premium editions of the hardcovers for first edition Dungeons & Dragons. There are 3 books: the Player's Handbook, Dungeon Master's Guide, and Monster Manual. You'll notice each of the books will contain this little note on the front saying that a portion of the proceeds from these books is actually going to help support the Gygax Memorial Fund, which, if you're not familiar with the fund itself, they're looking to raise money in order to put a statue up in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, in memory of Gary Gygax. So let's take a look. We'll just slide this off here. And just taking a peek, these are just a complete blast from the past. But the books themselves are in a faux leather hardbound. I guess maybe we call it pleather, who knows. But they also have gold leaf, and they also have a little fabric bookmark. But just opening the book itself, you can see very quality binding, and just taking a look through, there's the little bookmark. Very high quality paper, and I'm telling you folks, this is just right out of my late grammar school, early high school years, just going through and reading this. And of course there's all the various different charts involved. It's pretty funny to see just how far just the production quality and the artwork that we find in Wizards of the Coast D&D products now are compared to back in the day. The Player's Handbook itself carries a manufacturer's suggested retail price of $34.95. And as we see, there's all the different spells, and some of the artwork's not too bad, and others, yeah, not so hot there. But definitely just fantastic stuff, just to sit back and take a look and just read through, and it's like a time machine taking me back to the days of my youth. So we have the Player's Handbook. We also have the Dungeon Master's Guide. This is a book that I was very, very familiar with in my youth, since I usually got stuck being the DM all the time. I misspoke earlier when I recorded the intro video and said these are the 30th anniversary editions. Actually, these are reprints of the 1983 printings, so I guess the reality is it's the 29th anniversary. In the Dungeon Master's Guide, once again, really, really nicely done, nicely put together. These aren't going to fall apart from usage. I will point out that because this is a reprint of the 1983 edition, you aren't going to find any of the questionable content that was in the first 1979 hardcover printings, such as the, I remember the Dungeon Master's Guide had information on raping and pillaging, so you won't find that in here. And then we have the Monster Manual. Once again, none of that objectionable content. If I remember correctly, the 1979 edition of the Monster Manual had some bare breasts as far as, I think it was the harpies or succubi. I don't recall exactly what it was, but that artwork was replaced in the 1983 edition. And as I mentioned, the Dungeon Master's Guide has a $44.95 MSRP. The Monster Manual has an MSRP of $34.95, just like the Player's Handbook. But all the information's right there. This really isn't a review per se of the system itself. I mean, how can we really talk about Advanced Dungeons and Dragons? It's been around for 30 years. And I'm not saying that people don't continue to play first edition AD&D, but I would have to take a guess they are probably few and far between. But just taking a look, just really nicely done. And certainly, as I will mention in the wrap-up, I was very, very excited to get my hands on these new books. I should say, new reprints of 29-year-old books. So there's a look at the Monster Manual, Dungeon Master's Guide, and the Player's Handbook. So what's the verdict? With the special edition reprints of the first edition of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, Wizards of the Coast is bringing back something from my past. It's got a lot of nostalgia to it because I remember I was in about 7th grade when I first started to play D&D. And Elliot can attest, he as well began playing somewhere around 7th or 8th grade, and we played throughout a lot of high school. Granted, it's been a long time since I religiously played Dungeons & Dragons. I personally think the books are a fantastic pickup. But then again, it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, because the reality is you're probably not going to look to start running first edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons anytime soon. But I was very excited to get my hands on the books because it's actually very nostalgic. It's part of my childhood. Some people probably won't want to go out there and drop $115 just to pick up the books, so I would take a guess that the audience for these limited edition reprints is fairly small. But if you have the opportunity, and if you're like me, you're an older gamer and you remember the halcyon days of playing Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, by all means, get out there and pick up a copy of the Player's Handbook, Dungeon Master's Guide, and Monster Manual, either online or through your favorite gaming store. Plus, keep in mind that a portion of the proceeds will go towards the Gygax Memorial Foundation. So that's something to keep in mind as well. There you have it for this time around. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thanks for joining me. And be sure to swing over to thegaminggang.com for all the latest in gaming news, reviews, and opinion, and go to wizards.com/DND to see for yourself the first edition reprints from Wizards of the Coast.